President Reagan tried to restore his damaged leadership and public confidence. Did he succeed? The Democratic frontrunner, Senator Gary Hart, and Republican leader, Senator Paul Laxalt. Now, here's Larry King.
Thank you and good evening. We weren't with you last night because of the State of the Union address, but we're back tonight. Later in the program, Senator Paul Laxalt. Our first guest is Senator Gary Hart, former United States Senator from Colorado. He's at our studios in San Francisco. If you'd like to talk to Gary, the area code is 202-898-7600. Gary, anything last night in the President's speech surprise you?
Well, I'm not sure I was surprised. I think the speech lacked in two areas. One was a complete resolution of the Iran-Nicaragua scandal. The President made some general observation about assuming responsibility, but I don't know what that means in terms of the possibility of a legal diversion of funds to the Contras in Central America. He didn't mention that. And I don't know whether he assumes responsibility for that, particularly if laws were broken. That's a very crucial point. And second, the domestic agenda is 6 years too late. The issue of catastrophic health insurance, welfare reform, increased competitiveness and competition, productivity for this country, all should have been addressed, it seems to me, in the early 1980s, not 1987.
Gary, the Contra situation, is it in big trouble? If you were a proponent of Contra aid, would you be worried?
I sure would, because not simply the Democratic opposition, which is most of the Democrats have opposed this, not all, but now the erosion of support for the administration's policy within their own party, the Republican Party in the Congress. I think I would be surprised if a good number of the Republicans in the Senate voted for Contra aid again, given the scandal.
Was it, off the top, a bad idea to negotiate for hostage release with arms as a tool?
Yes. Is it a bad idea to negotiate for hostage release? Generally, no. Of course, you seek diplomatic and all non-military means to free Americans who are held, or any others who are held. But to trade arms with a nation that this administration has itself labeled as a terrorist nation is duplicitous and undermines our foreign policy and our credibility with our allies, whom this administration has been lecturing about their softness on terrorism.
Is there a way really to get them back without giving something? I mean, is that accomplishable, or are we merely, as a democratic society, always a pawn in this chess game?
Well, I think the answer is yes and no. It depends on what the something is. Some groups want one thing and some groups want another. If what they want is recognition of legal status, of course not. By definition, they cannot be a lawful group if they are outlaws. If they want, if it is a nation that wants to use hostages as a means of somehow getting us to begin to deal with them, then we ought to deal with them, and we ought to talk to them at the very least, whether that extends to diplomatic recognition or not. But never arms and never money or never tribute.
Where goes this presidency the next 2 years with the Democratic control in both the House and the Senate?
I'm afraid not very far, both because of the preoccupation with getting the facts out on this scandal. Again, particularly not just the Iranian arms deal, but the diversion of funds probably illegally to the Contras in Central America. That seems to me the more serious part of this business. And until this matter is resolved and the responsible parties are dealt with, then I think this thing will linger on and it will preoccupy everyone, including the press. If the President puts forward comprehensive proposals for health care and catastrophic insurance and the rest, I think he'll get a very responsible attention from the Democrats in the Congress and in the Senate, and hopefully passage of that very critical legislation.
You met with Mr. Gorbachev. First, your impressions.
He's very bright, he's very quick. He is a much more modern man than the previous generation of leaders. He is much less polemical and rhetorical. He has a much more analytic mind. He is not, I think, as well informed on the United States as he ought to be, not having been here. And I hope opportunity will arise soon for him to come here so that he'll expand his own horizons where we're concerned. But it's a whole new ballgame, and what concerns me is that I'm not sure this administration understands that or how to deal with it. I think we came very close to an enormous success in Iceland, and I think we let it slip through our fingers, and it could be a disaster of historic proportions.
Are you saying that Reagan then still has an opportunity in the next 2 years to come to some sort of arms agreement with Gorbachev?
unquestionably, and not because we want to do the Russians a favor or vice versa, but because I am convinced, based upon the conversations I had there, that in their self-interest, the Soviets want a major breakthrough in arms control. Now, I could have been misled, wouldn't be the first time, but I think we ought to test that theory out. I think what we saw in the Soviet proposals at Iceland, and they were sweeping and historic proposals, was a genuine desire to make some substantial breakthrough and a new departure in arms control negotiations. And I don't think our president was prepared for it, and I don't think we know. I think we're in disarray now as to know what to do about that.
You are one of the few Democrats. Are you not opposed to SALT II?
No. I was very strongly supportive of the SALT II treaty.
And you think that we should continue observing it?
Absolutely. In fact, I was the author of legislation in the 1987 Defense Authorization Bill that would have required, it didn't require, it was urging the administration to maintain adherence to the terms of SALT II. That passed the Senate overwhelmingly and passed the House unanimously, and the administration went ahead and broke the treaty terms anyway. So I'm very strongly in favor of that.
You would change a lot in our defense setup, would you not? You wrote a very good book about it. You think our emphasis is in the wrong place. Can you tell us briefly the thinking?
In a word, yes, in a word, I think particularly in the last decade, we've let our principal defense and deterrence become nuclear and not conventional. I think we ought to strike immediately and as quickly as we can for bold breakthroughs in reducing the size and power of the nuclear arsenals, maintaining a limited and survivable and non-threatening, non-first strike deterrent in the nuclear field, but putting more of our eggs in the conventional basket. And I don't mean just spending more money, but reforming our conventional forces, making them more ready and more capable to defend our legitimate interests as well as those of our allies. And I think, frankly, that policy of reduction of reliance on nuclear weapons and military reform will become the defense policy of this country in the 1980s and 90s.
It's interesting you're in San Francisco tonight. That's a rather important city to you. It's where you made a valiant attempt to get the nomination of your party, and those tremendous supporters, anyone who was there in '84 will remember that scene. How goes it now? Where do you stand? How's it going?
Well, I have said that I'll make some final decision on a second attempt at the presidency or a second national candidacy sometime in the spring and probably sometime in April. I have put that off longer than in the counterpart year of early '83 because I think national campaigns do go on too long, and I think they do threaten to bore people to death. And so we'll make some final decision there. We've taken some preliminary steps. There is an organizing committee and some preliminary fundraising, and of course I've done a great deal in the last 2 years to continue to expand policies in education and foreign policy and defense and other areas. And whatever I decide to do, I intend to be hopefully a visible and outspoken person in our party.
But practically, it's why you chose not to run for re-election, though, isn't it?
Well, it was one of the reasons. I didn't think it was fair in trying to decide for a third term in the Senate to, in effect, mislead the people of Colorado so long as I thought I might make another national race. I didn't think I did anything wrong by making the race the first time, but it does take away from your ability to perform in the Senate, and so I thought so long as the possibility existed of another national candidacy that I ought to not seek a third term in the Senate.
This is hypothetical. Assume you announce. Is there some sort of a curse of being the front runner? All front runners usually run into problems.
Well, I think it's because of what, as you well know, in Washington is called expectations. What happens is the pundits and the experts begin to create expectations for candidates in the early primaries, and if they don't meet them, then it's considered a terrible setback. That's, of course, what happened to Vice President Mondale in 1984. I think there are two things different where I'm concerned. I am not a former vice president or former nominee of our party. I am not the candidate of a number of the constituency groups in our party, at least yet anyway. And I don't have and won't have all the money in the world that front runners traditionally have had. But if front runnership means that the ideas, for example, the education reform proposals I put forward this week, get some more attention than some of the ideas I put forward in '83, then I welcome that status.
Do you believe that George Bush is in trouble?
Yes, but on the other hand, one can argue that all vice presidents get in trouble because they are not only the heirs of the fortunes of an administration in which they serve, but also the heirs of the misfortunes. Right now, this administration is having some misfortunes, and so Vice President Bush has to share in those.
Why do you think, Gary, that President Reagan had no coattails of any kind, was unable to swing close races Republican senatorial's way?
Because his popularity, frankly, is based upon his personality and his easygoing manner and his, in effect, promise and offering of kind of congenial hope for the future without much roots in policy. And he didn't really run on much of a mandate in 1984. He didn't put forward a bold new agenda for the country for the latter half of the 80s, and I think his victory was attributable more to people's sort of good feelings about him personally.
Gary has a new novel out. It's called The Strategies of Zeus. You like fiction?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Well, I've always been a reader ever since I was a very young child, and I enjoy it both for learning and for the beauty of the written word when it's well done, and the ability to communicate ideas, and I guess also for its recreation. I relax reading good books.
Is there a movie in The Strategies of Zeus?
I certainly hope so. If I may say so, it's a good book, and it's a story that I've had in my mind for a number of years, and it does have to do with arms control negotiations in Geneva between the United States and the Soviets in 87 and 88, and I think it turns out to be fairly topical.
We're going to break, and when we come back, we'll take your phone calls for former United States Senator Gary Hart.
That cool, refreshing feeling of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum puts a sparkle in your eye, a spring in your step. It makes things lots of fun. It's that little lift of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. It's that little lift. Come on and get you some. That clean, fresh taste Wrigley's Spearmint's got. That little lift that means a lot. It's that little lift of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum.
What are the barriers to achieving your goals? How can life destroy your confidence? What is stopping your success? Read Dianetics, the #1 self-improvement bestseller by L. Ron Hubbard. Buy your copy now at Walden Books. It's an education in yourself.
I'm George Plimpton, inviting you to experience the pleasures of Architectural Digest. Only Architectural Digest lets you inside the homes of people such as Johnny Carson, Jane Seymour, and Donald Trump. Homes our foremost architects consider their own proudest achievements. Doesn't Architectural Digest belong in your home?
Get 12 issues of Architectural Digest for only $29.95. Save almost 45% off the cover price. Call 1-800-257-1257.
John Hancock is a lot more than just insurance. CEO James Morton tells Inside Business today, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on CNN.
Monday on Take Two, the stars of yesterday, the new stars of today, and all of the glitter and glamour of America's film capital. Experience the excitement of Hollywood's 100th birthday celebration with the city's honorary mayor. Then meet TV's favorite kid sis, actress Tina Yothers, on Take Two at noon Eastern on CNN.
At the bottom of the hour, former Senator Paul Laxalt. Our guest is former United States Senator Gary Hart. We're ready to go to your phone calls, and we start with Denver, Colorado. Hello.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
First of all, for Mr. Hart, that's a two-part question. Why, when the Democrats and Mr. Hart have been screaming for the last few years at President Reagan to do something about the hostage situation, why is he now complaining when President Reagan has tried? And second of all, does he agree with anything that President Reagan has done during his administration?
Okay, Gary.
Well, first of all, I haven't screamed about the hostage situation. I rarely scream about anything. I've tried to make my criticisms of this administration constructive and compliment the administration where, in fact, they haven't done something well. Clearly, inflation is down. I think the administration gets some credit for that. OPEC oil prices have a lot to do with it as well. Second, there was restored, at least in the first half of the 1980s, some increased sense of confidence, and I think that's to the better. Whether it will last long or be real or genuine remains to be seen. I think there was a sense among our allies in the early half of the 80s that America was strengthened and was stronger and more committed to our Atlantic alliance, and I think the administration gets certain credit for that. Again, the question is how long will it last, and the list will go on. I haven't been a carping or consistent critic of this administration. On the other hand, I am bound to say, by virtue of the office that I held and my own personal convictions, where I disagree. I think we have $200 billion deficits. The president must assume some responsibility for those. We have a $150 billion trade deficit. The president must assume some responsibility for that. We have a declining education system. The president is the national leader, and part of that's happened on his watch. And the list goes on. So part of debate in this country is for different people to put different points of view forward. Where the administration tried to use diplomacy and made genuine efforts to free the hostages behind the scenes in permissible and legal ways in keeping with our values and principles, and I wholeheartedly support that effort. But not to deal with a country that the president himself has called a hotbed of terrorism and provide them arms and take sides in a war that we shouldn't be involved in, and finally, possibly illegally divert that money, tens of millions of dollars, against the laws of the United States to a covert operation in Central America. I think we're all bound to criticize that.
Gary Hart's our guest, Long Island, New York, our next call. Hello.
Good evening. Mr. Hart, I'd like to ask you a simple question, and I hope I can get a direct answer to the question itself.
I'll do my best.
Okay. The question is, what is wrong with us giving funds to the Nicaraguan rebels to fight a government that is obviously against the United States in every way it can be, and is pro-communist in every way it can be? I believe they have Cuban advisors and North Korean advisors, et cetera, obviously an unfriendly government in our hemisphere that is only going to export problems.
What's wrong with it, Gary?
Just giving them money and not sending our troops. I mean, I know if we send troops down...
Sir, you said you're going to ask a simple question.
Okay,
we got a speech.
Well, what was wrong with the diversion of funds from the sale of arms to Iran was it violated the laws of the United States. There were amendments in the law, or statutes in the law, that prevented the administration with going forward with those funds without notification and approval of Congress. And if, in fact, the money from the sale of arms to the Iranians was used for this purpose, there is a very plausible argument that the laws of the country were violated. That's a very serious thing. On the policy generally, I am opposed to it even if it's done in keeping with the laws of the country or not in violation of those laws, because I think what we ought to be doing is isolating that government, not trying to overthrow it. If Nicaragua represents a threat to this country's national security, the president should say so, and we should declare war on Nicaragua. But going around the world and supporting covert wars where our national security is not directly at stake is not in the best interest of this country's national security.
Do you know of any instance in our history where we were encouraging, raising money for, and supporting rebels of a country who we recognize and exchange ambassadors with?
None that spring to mind offhand. I'm sure there are some, but none that I can recall right now.
I couldn't either. We go to Olympia, Washington with Gary Hart on Larry King Live. Hello.
Thank you. Right now, about 70% of the American people believe that President Reagan is lying. I personally believe he's been lying to us all along. What I'd like to know is why is it taking so long for the Democrats to come out the closet and challenge him, and why are so few Democratic leaders now willing to challenge him?
Has he been given a good ride, Gary?
Well, all I can account for is myself. First of all, let me say I was disturbed in the early 1980s, particularly 81 and 82, with the number of Democrats, including Democratic leaders, who supported economic policies of this administration that I don't think they fundamentally believed in. They did so because the president was popular and they didn't want to have to go home and account for votes against him. I can only say for myself, coming from a state that overwhelmingly voted for President Reagan, I was convinced that supply-side economics would not work and would mount up huge deficits, and I voted against it, against very popular tax cuts that people thought they wanted at the time. I warned people if those tax cuts went through that they would cause huge deficits, and I happen to believe right now that I'm right. I was one of 11 senators who took that position. And I have basically opposed the fundamentals of those economic proposals because I thought they were unfair to working people and lower income people and the homeless and young people and children. And I have, all I can tell you to this caller is, I'd be more than happy to tell you my record of speaking out on the floor of the Senate and around this country against those policies.
Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm sorry, Gary, go ahead.
I can't account for any other Democrats. They'll have to speak for themselves.
Ann Arbor, Michigan for Gary Hart. Hello.
Yes, I have a two-part question. Why does Mr. Hart and the Democratic Party continue to run the Iran-Contra affair into the ground instead of addressing the problems of the economy, which we should be paying more attention to? And secondly, it appears that the Democratic Party, if they can't elect a president, go about trying to destroy the opposition's president with suggestions of illegality and conspiracy.
The second part might be a little unfair, sir. It wasn't the Democrats who dealt with Iran, was it?
I feel so.
Okay, Gary.
Let me answer the question. First of all, the Democrats aren't keeping this issue alive. If anybody's keeping it alive, it's the administration by not putting the facts forward, by having people who are taking the Fifth Amendment before congressional committees, and a president who doesn't seem to be clear yet on whether he did or did not order this, and if he didn't, why he didn't know. These are legitimate questions for the American people to ask, and they're being asked by the press. I, for one, have not harped on the Iranian scandal, and I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of hard statements urging the American people to be concentrating on this. I gave a speech last night, a major policy speech on education. That got some press attention. I wish it had gotten more. But I have been speaking on the issues of the economy, and I'll continue to, and I think you'll find other Democrats doing the same.
Phoenix, Arizona, hello.
Yeah, in light of the anniversary of the Constitution, I was wondering if he was as concerned as I was about Edward Meese and his policies that seem to be eroding our basic constitutional freedoms.
Well, there has been, for those of us who take a fairly strict view of the Constitution, both in the interpretations by the Justice Department of constitutional rights as well as appointment of judges to the federal bench, a clear swing towards or away from the kinds of protections for individuals that the Supreme Court put forward and the Congress put forward in this century. And I think that's frankly a setback for civil liberties and constitutional rights. I am very worried, as I would be if it were the opposite ideology of, say, the far left, of stacking the federal courts and the federal bench with ideologues, particularly who are 32 and 33 years old, and could well be on the bench for 40 or 50 years. That's a very, very dangerous thing to do.
Back to a couple of political things, Gary. Do you expect Jesse Jackson to seek the party's nomination again?
I have no way of knowing. I would suppose, as I suppose a number of others will run, I would suppose the Reverend Jackson will run, but I have no way of knowing what his intentions are.
The last time you were on this show, I think he called in.
Yes, he did.
I remember. Scranton, Pennsylvania with Gary Hart. Hello.
Hello. I think the biggest problem facing the United States economic system right now is the budget deficits. I'd like to know what Mr. Hart can do to solve the budget deficit problem. Would you raise taxes, make bigger cuts, or what would you actually do?
I think all people who have focused on this, and I have tried to as a former member of the Budget Committee, come to the same conclusion. There is no single way to balance the budget, but there are a package of initiatives, if adopted on a bipartisan basis with presidential support, that could in fact get this deficit substantially down in the early 1990s. Those include adding the Defense Department to the list of cuts and not accepting it because it's 35% of federal spending. Reforming the entitlements programs, particularly Medicare and Medicaid, so that health services for the poor and elderly are delivered in more efficient ways and cost savings to the taxpayers. Selective cuts in programs on the domestic side that aren't working. The farm programs are totally out of control. We could cut substantially from those and go farther in saving the family farms than we are today, because a lot of those incentives are going to corporate farms. And finally, we need additional revenues, not income taxes on middle and lower income Americans, but I think an oil import fee is one. I think luxury taxes are another, and user fees. and perhaps a temporary surtax on very wealthy individuals in this country.
Last call for Gary Hart, then we'll meet Senator Paul Laxalt, and we go to San Francisco. Hello.
Yes, Senator Hart. Just prior to the Iran-Contra affair, Republicans were testing the waters, so to speak, regarding the extending the term of the presidency. Considering that both President Nixon and Reagan have encountered some kind of scandal in their second term, could this still be seriously considered an alternative in Washington?
No.
That's dead, isn't it?
Yes.
What about the idea, Gary?
It was dead anyway. It was not going to happen, but it's certainly not going to happen now.
What about the idea of a one-term, 6-year presidency?
Well, I get very conservative when it comes to amending the Constitution, with the exception of guaranteeing equality for everybody in our society, including women. If you start tampering with the terms of office and length of terms and things like that, I just somehow react instinctively against that. I think basically the people that started this country off knew what they were doing, or had a pretty good idea of what they were doing. And if you start restructuring the Congress and the way people serve in Congress, I don't think that's the problem this country has. I think what the problem this country has is leadership. It's people who are willing to tell the American people the truth, put forward specific vision and an agenda to address the challenges that we have, including deficits and foreign policy and arms control and education and the rest, and uniting the people behind that agenda. And that's real leadership, and we don't have it right now.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Larry.
Our guest has been from our studios in San Francisco, former United States Senator Gary Hart. He has a novel out called The Strategies of Zeus. He's also jealous of the income Senator Laxalt receives in his law firm as compared to what Senator Hart receives in his. We may get to that, Paul. Who knows? We'll be back with Senator Paul Laxalt, former United States Senator from Nevada, on Larry King Live. Don't go away.
Coming up, in Reagan's defense.
I used to get in a lot of trouble around here. We helped serve at parties, worked on my bike, and Sprat had a lot of accidents. But since my folks bought variegated gold label carpet, everything has been great. Because kids powder drinks, oil and grease, even Sprat can't spot this carpet. It's made with Monsanto certified locked-in stain blocker. And it sure kept us out of the doghouse.
Variegated gold label carpet with locked-in stain blocker. It's tough and beautiful.
Monday night, a sheriff fighting to protect a town that's turned against him. They're saying killing's in his blood.
Well, isn't it? If it wasn't, I wouldn't be here alive and kicking now, would I?
Richard Widmark, death of a gunfighter. Then,
I'm the best trapper in the North Country.
But Stuart Granger soon finds that being the best isn't always enough. The Wild North. It all begins at 8:05 Eastern on the Superstation Monday night.
This is CNN, the world's most important network.
Should your name be on this envelope? It should if you or someone you love is age 50 to 80, and it will be addressed to you if you call now for this important information. Free information about a life insurance policy designed especially for men and women age 50 to 80. Life insurance with no physical examination and no medical questions. You cannot be turned down regardless of your health or for any reason. And your premium will be $6.95 a month and will never increase. Colonial Penn Life Insurance Company wants to send you the important information in this envelope, and it's free. So if you are age 50 to 80 and thought it would be difficult to buy life insurance, shouldn't you call now? Here's the number.
For free information in the mail, call 800-257-1257. This is a free call, 800-257-1257.
Tomorrow night, Maximilian Schell with us. Our next guest is former United States Senator Paul Laxalt from Nevada. He is now a member of a prominent Washington law firm, and he says the figure printed in the Wall Street Journal was wrong about the salary, right?
Well, I think it was a little exaggerated.
Senator Hart was nervous.
I bet he was.
You're a very close friend of the Reagans. How are they, personally, getting right or wrong, taking all of this?
I think overall very well. I think they've both been deeply disappointed in the fact that too many Americans don't believe the president. I think he feels very badly about that. You know, he spent a long, distinguished career, Screen Actors Guild, as an actor, in politics. I think really, Larry, it's probably the first time in his life that he's had his word and integrity questioned, and that really bothers him.
And I guess at that age, when credibility comes into mind, it would be a very deep wound.
It is. It is. He's coming through it well, though. I think he's recognizing now that eventually the truth will out, and that's going to depend almost entirely upon the military people.
The one question that boggles everyone, and you know him so well, is since we will accept that he didn't know, why didn't he call in Mr. Poindexter and Colonel North before having them leave and asking them then, in the setting of the Oval Office, to tell him what happened?
Darn if I know.
Have you asked him?
No, we haven't discussed that specifically. You know, this broke originally on a weekend, and Ed and East spent most of the weekend interviewing him. And when he came in the following morning and briefed President Reagan and Don Regan, I guess they felt at that time they better go public with it very quickly, and no one ever thought at that time that they should be brought in and simply level with the president. It would have helped a lot.
Did he make a mistake calling North a great American hero? Will that come back to hurt him?
I don't think so. I think that he felt that North was a hero.
So it was an honest opinion, honestly expressed, no matter what we might learn further?
I think he feels that today.
Do you miss the Senate? It's been so short a time.
I wish I could say so, but not yet.
Where is this going to go? How much is it going to boggle down this presidency?
I don't know. I hope not too much, but I think it's going to last for several months. The committee's going to take a long time to complete this. It could be short-circuited if somehow we could get the Poindexter North testimony out. I'm satisfied if they could come forward in some fashion. I know the lawyers have their problems, and simply say the president knew nothing of the diversion. That's the central question. I think that interest in this would quickly dissipate.
David Broder in the Washington Post today wrote a scathing column about Donald Reagan, the chief of staff, saying that he has been in the wrong man, wrong job, and he's continuing to stay there. This serves the president. Your thoughts?
I've been supporting Don, and I've been supporting him not only because I think he's done a good job. It's been a peculiar thing in this rather peculiar town that during the first 4 years we had a committee really staffing the White House and advising the president. And there was a great hue and cry here by a number of people, particularly the political pundits and some of the media. You can't run a White House this way. You've got to have strong chief of staff. Well, we have a strong chief of staff, and now the cry is that perhaps he's been too strong, too overreaching. I felt that during all this, my first reaction was, when this broke, Don's got to go. Because here is a strong chief of staff. He prides himself on controlling the shop. How in the world could this have gone by him? Well, I checked it out, and I found out that the NSC, National Security Council, which both of these men sit, does not report and hasn't for a long while with the chief of staff. That's a direct reporting procedure to the president himself. So then it became a question of trust and confidence on the part of the president. And Don Regan has done a great job for this president. The president trusts him. That's his man. As far as I'm concerned, he stays as long as the president wants him.
Will Schultz stay?
I think so.
Despite what Mr. Broder was a pretty good reporter.
Yeah, David is as competent and reliable as anybody I know in this town, and he's indicated and made statements this morning, frankly, were surprising to me, that if Don Regan doesn't go, some key people like George Schultz may go. I'm unaware of this, and I'd be surprised if that's really the case. I would think that George Schultz is going to ride this term out.
What about Paul Laxalt and the presidency? First, did you give it serious thought?
Oh, yes, and I continue to do so.
And
what we had last summer was a boomlet. The national press suddenly found that it would be interesting to have Paul Laxalt enter this race. I know a lot of them because they want to know what the president would do is between George Bush and Paul Laxalt. That was a lot of it. And it built up such a head of steam without any authorization on my part that we decided in the fall to cool it, just absolutely cool it. I had to complete my Senate duty. I had to complete my party job, which I've just done. Then I wanted to settle in my law firm. In the spring, Larry, I'll take a look and see what the situation is.
Can you give me an idea, Paul, what will be the determining factor? I mean, when you make a decision like that, is it you feel that no one has come forward who can carry the mantle of the Reagan presidency again?
That'll be part of it. Of course, that's a tough judgment to make, and it'd be subjective. And
Ego.
Yeah, that's a lot of it. I think probably in my own case, the principal factor is whether or not, having lived with this so long, I've been in 3 presidential campaigns, I've lived the presidency with this great man, is whether or not Paul Laxalt really wants to take the trip.
And obviously, then, you do not have a favorite among the current announced or unannounced candidates.
No, I have no favorite, either publicly or otherwise.
Do you think Pat Buchanan did a smart thing in pulling out to see how far Kemp can go with the conservative element?
I think Pat read it right. I think Pat felt, and appropriately so, that he would have been very controversial. Exciting candidate, to be sure. But these days, in the Republican Party, I think you're going to have to be a little bit more to the center. And I think he finally came to the conclusion that his candidacy would hurt Jack Kemp. And I think he and Jack are close, and so he called it properly, and he called it promptly.
Will the president stay out of the front race?
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And should?
Well, I think he should.
I mean, should he be loyal to his vice president, who was loyal to him?
Well, perhaps he should, but that hasn't been the way he's played the game. I watched him all the way back to governorship day, since he's been in. He wouldn't get involved in the Senate primary in California when his own daughter was there. So I think that's proof of the pudding that, as far as he's concerned, Republican primaries are off limits to Ronald Reagan, and I think he'll adhere to that strictly this time.
CNN ran a story this weekend that a prominent group of 12 individuals, have put up money to buy President Reagan and Nancy a home, a $3 million home in Bel Air. Is that true?
I've heard some rumors to that effect, but I haven't confirmed it.
You're not one of the 12?
No.
Would that be logical to you? I mean, would it seem that he'd need a $3 million home in Bel Air? I mean,
I can't even speculate as to what they would need. I don't think $3 million goes all that far in Bel Air, but...
well, you squint through to say that. It's tough to hit after a boy from Brooklyn. We'll be back with your phone calls for Senator Paul Laxalt after these words.
Hello, I'm Dick Van Dyke. If you're 45 to 74, I have a very serious question to ask you. Have you ever thought about the kind of suffering your spouse and loved ones may have to go through after your death? Well, there's not much you can do to prepare them for the sorrow that would follow, but there is something you can do to help prevent the financial crisis that may result. You see, most people over 45 know they need more life insurance, but the problem is it's often just too expensive to get because of your age or your health. Well, I'm pleased to tell you National Benefit Life has found a way for you to get the protection you need at a price you really can't afford. Just $3.95 a month. That's right, just $3.95 a month. It's called Security Life, a remarkable new plan that provides solid insurance protection to your family when they need it the most. For example, a 45-year-old man can get $40,000 of initial protection for just 65 cents a day. This is a life insurance plan you simply cannot be turned down for, no matter what your present health is like. Just think, big dollar benefits, low monthly premiums, guaranteed acceptance, and no agent coming to your home. You know, I've looked at a lot of life insurance plans for people our age, but I believe Security Life is one of the best around. Why don't you pick up the phone right now and call for your free information kit? It comes in the mail, tells you all you need to know about this plan. When you do, you'll find out why I'm recommending Security Life and why I bought it for myself.
To get your free information kit, call toll-free 1-800-638-1800. That's toll-free 1-800-638-1800. Call now. The information is free, and so is the call. That number again is 1-800-638-1800.
We're ready to go to your phone calls for Senator Paul Laxalt, former United States Senator from Nevada. He is now with the law firm of, do we have enough time? Finley, Cumble, Wagner, Hine, Underberg, Manley, Meyerson, and Casey.
Someday I'll get to know all of them.
We go to Washington, D.C. Hello.
Mr. Laxalt, please comment on Mr. Hart's borderline slanderous and somewhat irresponsible remarks that our leadership in the executive office are liars.
Well, I don't think Gary used the word. I think your caller did.
I think I agree with Larry. I don't think that Gary Hart went quite that far. And, of course, I can't agree with that sort of characterization at all. I think there have been mistakes made. There have been honest mistakes.
Should the president have discussed it a little longer last night in the State of the Union?
I don't know what more he could have said. You know, there are an awful lot of people throughout the country, even in our own party, who said you ought to apologize for this. Well, he doesn't feel within himself there's anything to apologize for. So it would have been a false apology. And I, for one, didn't press him to do something he couldn't live comfortably with.
Wouldn't he be one of the few people who think that this was not some arrangement of arms for hostages?
Oh, I should say distinct minority.
But he does believe that.
Oh, he believes it, absolutely believes it. The original entree was to work something out with what they viewed to be a moderate element in Iran. And I suppose the definition would be anybody who's opposed to the Soviets is moderate in that context. And that later the hostage thing came in incidentally. The people simply, by and large, don't believe that. They believe, according to my mail, most of them, that surely there would have been no arms swapped had there been no hostages.
Yeah. We go to Livingston, New Jersey with former United States Senator Paul Laxalt. Hello.
What kind of strategy is it to say we have to get this Iran-Contra scandal behind us when all of the investigations are impending?
Well, I think that what we have to think about doing is running it on a double track. The investigation should go forward. There are a lot of unanswered questions, as Senator Hart indicated. But we can't stop running the country in the process. And it seems to me, let the investigations run their course. I've been told by the leaders of those investigations they'll attempt to do it as quickly as possible. I accept that. But in the process, we've got to continue running the country.
A lot of it, now Watergate, the country stopped. Right?
It did.
There was nothing else.
Stopped, yeah.
How did that happen? In other words, what happens? People still go into their office every day, functions, bills come forward, discussions are held. Why should it stop? Why can't both go on?
Oh, I think probably government does go on, Larry. On a policy level, as far as creative ideas are concerned, they stop. Why? Distraction. Because they're totally consumed by handling questions from the press, going up on the Hill and testifying before committees, strategizing what should be done next, so there becomes a paralysis on top.
Is there anything that can prevent all of this? Anything that you can build into a government? I asked Senator Hart, would a one-term presidency, 6 years, be helpful? No lame duck situation. Any ideas on this whole thing?
No, I just think this federal government is growing so complex that you're bound to have problems like this.
As long as they're human beings involved.
They're human beings, and they make mistakes. And mistakes were made here, as the president himself has acknowledged. And so long as you have human beings in the process, you're going to continue to have this problem.
Montgomery, Alabama, hello.
Yes, as a Republican taxpayer, I'm concerned about the billions of dollars spent. So I'm concerned about where the missing Iranian arms money went. There's an indication it went into political campaigns. If this is the case, is it not the same as the laundering of the illegal campaign funds by Maurice Stans in the Nixon campaign?
Well, I suppose if that were the case, that's probably a correct analogy, but there's absolutely no evidence, at least that I know of, or that anyone has presented to anybody officially here, that any of that money was diverted to political campaigns. I was very active in a lot of the campaigns, and never did I see any evidence of this kind of money coming in. This last campaign was awash in money. Anyhow, most of the campaigns had more than enough money, in my estimation, too much money, and I don't think that there's any indication now that there was a diversion of that sort.
That would have been an uproarious scandal.
Oh, that would have been terrible.
Atlanta, hello.
Yes, good evening, Senator Laxalt and Larry.
Hi.
I'm a new Republican from the Old South, and many former Democrats, as you know, from the South have switched parties as well. With that in mind, I would like to get Senator Laxalt's personal opinion about another Democrat who switched parties as well, and that's the wonderful, articulate Jean Kirkpatrick. I would like to know what he thinks about her. Would he consider running with her on a ticket? And if not, whom would his choice be? Thank you.
Well, he doesn't have a choice among them, but your thoughts on Kirkpatrick?
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 plus, I think Jean Kirkpatrick has made a significant contribution to this country and certainly this administration. She's as sound in foreign policy as anybody I know. And she makes a striking appearance throughout the country wherever she goes. In my estimation, although I made one of the speeches myself, aside from the president, made the finest speech of the convention. So I think she's probably been one of the greatest additions to this party. Whether or not she would consent to being a running mate to Paul Laxalt, which would be a high honor, of course, is entirely up to her.
But is she on the ticket possibility for all candidates?
I would think so. I would think so. I mean, she has all the attributes, very strong in foreign policy.
Well, she said on this program, while she doesn't think much of the job, she would literally have to take it if asked to run for vice president.
I think that's Jean.
We'll be back with our remaining moments and more of your phone calls for Senator Paul Laxalt on Larry King Live right after this.
Now, brilliant nail colors for today's new fashions. Leave press-on nails in 18 deep, rich, dimensional colors. Cotton candy.
Sample it.
Open mist.
Mysterious.
Leave press-on nails. 18 great nail colors you just press on with undreamed-of ease. Desert mold. Fiesta.
Lively.
Sugar plum. 40 Lee adhesive tabs and 20 Lee press-on nails for a perfect fit. Lee press-on nails. 18 sensational fashion colors. Press on.
Behold the beer belly, the old spare tire, the Labanza. 50 million Americans need a shortcut to get from fat to flat. And here it is. It's called the Gut Buster. It's the ultimate fitness machine, specifically designed to firm and flatten the stomach as nothing else can. Just watch this easy exerciser turn ordinary sit-ups into fat-burning, tummy-tightening power stretches. Just slip into the stirrups, curl your fingers around the molded hand grips, and row your way to a trimmer you. And ladies, if you're as serious as he is, that flat stomach you had in high school can be yours again. Minutes a day is all it takes. Basic spring-ups like these work the upper abdominal region. Reverse for tension-assisted high risers that exercise lower stomach muscles. This sturdy unit travels easily, so you can exercise anywhere, and it's yours with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So go ahead, Gutbusters, if you're serious. And you're serious about a flat stomach, just pick up the phone and exercise your right to call toll-free now.
To order your Gutbuster, call 1-800-257-1257. That's 1-800-257-1257. Use your credit card to avoid COD charges, or send check or money order for $19.95 plus $3 shipping and handling to The Gutbuster, P.O. Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia 30306. That toll-free number again is 1-800-257-1257.
Our guest, Senator Paul Laxalt, Los Angeles. Hello.
Hello, Larry. I wanted to ask the senator what he thought of this. It seems like the Democrats have trouble getting elected nationally because they pander to a lot of the women and minorities and unions. But aren't the Republicans running into the same type of problem with the religious right by not divorcing themselves from the Swaggarts and Falwells and that type?
I don't think so. First of all, I think probably all that group philosophically are compatible with general Republican thinking. And in the last election, I think certainly in our 84 election, a lot of the key states in the Bible Belt, the Falwells and the Robertsons and their constituencies helped greatly in the Reagan campaign. As far as I'm concerned, I don't see any real minus to the Republican Party because most of these people are Democrat by registration. And to the extent that they come over and conform to traditional Republicanism, whatever that is, as far as I'm concerned, I think they're welcome.
Newark, New Jersey, for Paul Laxalt. Hello.
Yes, good evening. I would like to address my question to Mr. Laxalt, and I would like a really direct answer to this.
I'll try.
Okay. Last Saturday on Novak and Evans' program on CNN, Republican Senator Jesse Helms appeared. And he made, in answer to a question by Mr. Evans, he said this. He made the statement that the money, the arms sale was expressly for the purpose of funding the Contras, and I do not have this twisted around. I have it absolutely right in my head. Mr. Helms said that, Senator Helms said that, and then he went so far, he took it a step further, and he said, quote, I know Ronald Reagan a long time, and I know that that was his intent, which seems to indicate to me that not only was that true, but that Ronald Reagan knew in advance of he knew the whole plot to begin with.
Your comment.
Well, I didn't see the broadcast. I do know Jesse Helms. And I won't for a moment dispute your recollection of what happened. I can tell you this, that Ronald Reagan is one of the most truthful men I've ever known, certainly one of the most truthful men I've ever known in politics. And I asked him specifically in December when I was starting to do all the television shows. And I was in and out of every television studio, I swear, in this town for weeks on end. I said, I've just got to know, could there have been some situation, hallway conversation, situation room, where this matter of the Contra diversion was discussed and might escape your attention? He said, absolutely not. And he insisted that he knew nothing about it.
If the caller is quoting Senator Helms correctly, Senator Helms is then wrong.
No, it's hard to characterize what went on in the interview, but if Senator Helms made the observation that the purpose of the arms sale to Iran was for the purpose of diverting the money of the Contras, Senator Helms was wrong.
Long Beach, California. Hello.
Hi. After the awful pictures of the Klan in Georgia, why didn't the president mention civil rights?
Yes, a lot of people calling on various shows today asking, no mention of South Africa, no mention of civil rights in the State of the Union address.
I thought probably he should have gotten into that subject myself. But the plate was so full that apparently time precluded mention of it. South Africa is a matter of very deep concern in this country, as it should be. And I thought perhaps a segment should have been included.
Are you disturbed by what you saw in Georgia? That still exists, racism?
Yeah, I can't believe it. But it's there. And we all are going to have to do our best to attempt to contain it. It's there, Larry. There's no point kidding ourselves. Not only in the South, it's very present in a good portion of the North as well.
Surprisingly, Senator Gore said last night on my radio show that he thought that President Reagan's pronouncements in the area had been strong and that his Martin Luther King Jr. Day speech was extraordinary.
Good for him.
You think the president has been?
Oh, no question about it.
And you think it pains him to see what he saw?
Absolutely.
You should have included it, maybe.
I think so.
All right, when is decision time for Paul Laxalt? When can we know whether it's a go or we're just going to enjoy the comforts of the padded walls of Finley, Cumber, Wagner, Hine, Underberg, Manley, Myerson, and Casey?
Sometime in late spring, Larry.
Okay. April, May-ish?
I think so.
And we'll all know when you know, right?
I'll come down here and give you the word.
Thanks very much,
Good being with you, Larry.
Our guests have been earlier United States Senator Gary Hart, former senator from Colorado, who is the front runner and for the Democratic nomination, although will not announce officially until late spring, and Senator Paul Laxalt, former general chairman of the Republican Party, former senator from Nevada, who will also make his intentions known in late spring.
This is CNN, the world's most important network.
Right now.